MMA, JYP, and Stardust. He only got one win and 3 losses, unfortunately, but managed to escape the group in 4th place, where he finds himself in the loser bracket here. But Hyun didn't do that much better either. 2 wins, 2 losses. And he finds himself playing his first game in Losers Round 1. The last game of Losers Round 1 before we move up to the winners bracket again, which will be our next game. These 2 players, former teammates a long time ago. Anybody that followed StarCraft a while back would have remember Team SCV Life, TSL. Both of these players were on that, and they're still friends here today. They've met many a time over all these international tournaments. And the most recent one, I suppose, that comes to my mind is the last MLG tournament where Polt won.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you talk about how often these guys play together. Anybody that follows online cups, your Zotacs, your Go for SC2s, these guys face each other in the finals of probably half of the ones that have been played this year. Yeah. Both very competitive, constantly in these online cups, and as a result, they both kind of have these styles that can be tuned towards pretty much any type of aggression or economic play that the other makes. So there could be a pretty interesting back and forth as far as the strategical decisions that get made. But Polt comes in, he scouts this quick gas from Hyun, and he has to keep his eyes open now because Hyun, unlike Life that Polt played earlier, is sometimes much more prone for going straight for that big 2-base attack.
Yeah, Hyun is well known for building roaches. He's won many a series, many a game with building roaches, and of course Bentley's alongside it, and I'm quite sure that's going to be on the top of Polt's mind. They've played that a lot together, so I'm pretty sure that he'll be expecting something there.
Yeah, the Overlord gets the read on the factory coming in, the command center as well. Very standard follow-up for the Reaper play. Now, Polt differentiates a little bit from other Terrans in that we do see oftentimes the starport. We had MMA actually kind of doing this similar style as well. You can see he's got a lot of minerals banked up. He can go straight into the Hellions and still get that starport as the gas comes in. Also taking the second refinery, so not willing to expose himself to any type of risk centered around a very fast 3 command center build, which is something that, for all intents and purposes, Hyun's play style counters very well. He's putting out a few more Zerglings. He actually has that link speed about to complete. He's going to have a little bit of presence on the map. If he can get a good catch on the Hellions that come out for Polt on the Reaper, then there is potential here for him to deny the scouting of an aggressive attack that comes up towards the later stage of the game.
And that's going to be very important for Polt. Just always have that eye on the map, eye on Hyun. You always have to be able to know exactly what he's doing at all times here. But as we can see, Hyun has not decided to mine gas again. He's not going to be going for some form of 2-base all-in, which he's so well known for. He's got a 3rd hatchery on the way, and it should be a regular game coming up for him.
Yeah, Hellions giving a little bit of a run from these Zerglings. Not able to catch him quite yet. Hyun using those queens to spread their creep. He's going to move up to 4 total. Currently has 3 on the map, so keeping these 2 up front. He's going to have to wait a little bit now. He can get the rest of the injections going as they complete. But Polt wants to try to keep a presence on the map, slow down this production. He has Marauders coming in actually behind this. He's building that quick reactor with the starport that we saw him do in one of his games versus Life. This could be another fast drop play, still anticipating the quick Viking from Polt to try to deny map vision. But these Zerglings, he's cleaning up a decent bit of them. Polt hasn't really lost anything actually this game, so everything that he can kill here, really, really nice. Last few Hellions coming out, but it looks like Polt's actually committing to a little bit more Hellions. This is starting to look like the game on Belshir Vestige, actually, that he played with a very aggressive Hellion attack and just 1 drop with Marauders.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to try and get a lot of damage done as fast as possible here. He's dedicating a lot of resources into this. The Marauders have been made as well. And these Hellions, a couple of them are going to get grabbed. That's pretty nice there for Hyun, especially because these Hellions are a real big part of the follow-up attack that we're going to see here. This is a big loss for Polt.
Yeah, a huge loss, as the Overlord even saw back home that Polt was continuing to produce those Hellions. We do have a pause here, but just to finish the point, those Hellions, the reason he's building more than 6 is he wants to use them all for an attack at a potential 3rd base if he wants to deal damage with them. And kind of looking at the way that this has panned out, I feel like he's really been, I think, a kick in the shin as far as getting that attack goes.
Do you think this attack that Polt has planned is going to work? Is it going to... I mean, he's lost 6 to 8 Hellions now. That's a lot. They're a crucial part of this. They're meant to be when Stim is ready with the Marauders, with a couple of units that are on the other side as well, but having lost those.
I mean, just looking at the number of Zerglings that Hyun's been producing, what Hyun's game plan has been, it just doesn't seem like going with a lower amount of units than you'd normally want is going to be effective in this scenario.
Well, we'll have to just wait a quick second here while Polt gets ready. It looks like he is ready to go again, so thank you for bearing with us here. In this first map, it is still best of threes here in losers round 1, and it will remain best of threes for a little bit longer until we do reach day number 3. But Hyun is ready, Polt is ready, so we can continue on with this now.
All right, so we're just counting down, just letting the players get ready to rock and roll. As we just saw, these Zerglings giving chase, actually almost picking off the last Hellion of Polt, and he will be able to grab that. So currently, Polt has 4 Hellions. He has 2 more about to pop out. Imagine if he didn't lose those 6 Hellions earlier on. He's lost a total of 8 units this game. If he has those 6 Hellions, suddenly this becomes a very difficult attack to stop with just pure Zergling. It's something that you're going to want Roaches against, or even Banelings for a lucky shot. But now it's not quite as big of a problem that he has to worry about, in all honesty.
And now the third command center is coming into play. I'm pretty sure we'll eventually see double engineering bases as well. He's got to catch up with these upgrades. He's very far behind as the evolution chambers are now finished up. They're going to start before the engineering base, not just at the same time they do, but here comes this movement out from Polt.
Hellions are trying to make something happen. Do pick off a few of the Zerglings, and as long as he's not engaging on creep, there's still a lot of potential for the Hellions to maintain that map control. It just slows down that transition into the barracks, into those engineering bays, as you'd mentioned, and well, Polt's going to try to make something work with this. He does have 4 Marauders still. That stim pack upgrade is just about to complete. He has a medevac here as well. And very nicely, he can clean up the creep tumors. And if there's one thing that you want to do against a Zerg player early on, especially a player like Hyun who can bring aggression, is slow down the unit movement speed. The Zerglings try to commit an attack. Those Marauders, very tanky. He actually escapes with all of them and that medevac. As long as these Hellions can get out, and they're actually getting a great number of drone kills. I think this has been a pretty decent trade for Polt, as long as he can get out with everything.
Well, does he get out here with everything? The Marauders are still alive on the high ground, doing a little bit of damage to these Queens. Nope, Transfuse keeps that one alive. The Zerglings try to wrap around these Hellions. That's not going to work either here. So, what do you rate the success of this? Quite high? I mean, he never got to the drone line, but he picked off 2 Queens, quite a few Hellions.
I think it's important to consider that how late this pressure came in. Hyun's still saturated on 3 bases. His burr upgrade just completed. He still has his 1-1 going. Now, Polt also has his +1-1 on the way, but more importantly, he delayed the creep spread, and Hyun doesn't seem to be going towards, one of those, I guess you could say, kind of expected styles of the Roaches. He's going for a Spire, and this could be a very clean Zergling, Baneling, Mutalisk game. I still think Hyun's in a decent spot. The creep was slowed down a little bit. Polt's production a little bit later than you would typically see from a Terran. And also, we actually have Polt going for siege tank-based composition early on, which could be in anticipation of that potential aggression from Hyun.
All right, well, we are about to have... Well, we do see actually tanks. A couple of tanks being made there from Polt, and I do like the addition of tanks. I thought that would maybe be the one unit he'd have to build to be able to defeat Hyun with his known aggression. He loves to be able to stay in this mid-game, mid-tier unit area where he's producing a lot of Zerglings, a lot of Banelings, a lot of Roaches. But in this game, he is playing rather standard, you can say, like most Zergs are.
Talking about the odds of that, Polt tries to place a missile turret outside of his natural, and a burrowed Zergling prevents that from happening. So he actually knows now that there is burrow in play on this map. What a weird way to find out about that. But the 4th base is on the way. The Viking passes over that, so Polt is aware of this. And, typically that's what the Terran versus Zerg matchup becomes about. Pressing out those huge waves of infantry. And in this case, with the siege tanks as well as these Hellions to try to delay the 4th base. But Hyun, with these Zerglings burrowed randomly, he's able to see the units starting to move around the field. He has a little bit of extra vision that he doesn't need creep for. Gets us surrounding the Hellions, catching him unaware. And that's a nice little grab. Those Zerglings really want to storm the siege tanks once Polt gets closer and closer to this creep.
Well, he's on creep right now. He's going to probably have to land a scan there to get rid of it. The scan does them down. Gets quite a lot of the creep tumors, and tanks are in good position. 2-2 on the way for both players here. Baneling speed not quite ready for Hyun. Ideally, would love for that to complete to get a proper surround, a proper engagement onto this Terran army. The tanks are going to have a field day on those Banelings if they are sieged up, but currently they are not sieged, and Hyun goes in for this.
Siege tanks are exposed, trying to siege up, but not enough time. Those Banelings without the speed upgrade having a bit of difficulty catching up to this Bioforce. A couple of them detonate on the Marauders. Polt's not taking the worst trade humanly possible, as these Banelings, the speed is just now completing, and he picks up and gets away. About as good of a trade as Polt was going to get for that fight, in all honesty.
Well, now we have a 4th base down for Hyun, and the top left-hand side will start to mine from that soon. And I mean, if you were to rate who would be leading in this game, through what we've seen with Polt dedicating to a couple of units earlier on, not really focusing too much on his economy upgrades. We just saw Hyun push this attack. What do you think?
You have to look at the way that the later game stage is being set up. Polt's getting the rest of his barracks together. He's adding on a 4th command center. As the Terran player, it's very important to manage to grab that. But since there's no infestation pit coming in for Hyun, Polt should be able to get that standard lead on upgrades that we commonly see Terran players manage to have. And if he can keep the macro up, I'd say this is a good position for Polt just because he's kept this creep so far back.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. The creep has been pushed back, and there is a drop headed toward the main base. We'll see how much that can do up there. And there's drilling claws now being researched for these Widow Mines. The 4th command center on the way here for Polt. And there is a Marauder in the mix here. There is a Spore Crawler, though, to help push this Medivac back, but Hyun does not know about it until almost last minute as he sees it coming behind the spawning pool, coming behind the Spire.
The curse of that Viking patrolling away for Overlords does mean this drop gets in. Trying to grab a drone or two. Queen transfuse actually causing him to lose almost nothing to this. He will maybe lose that Queen, but the Zerglings are distracting him. Does grab the Queen, but that's about it. Maybe not exactly what Polt was looking for, but here's the main push at the 4th base, bringing absolutely everything. The Zerglings, the Banelings, the Mutalisks storming in, and Polt picks off the hatchery, immediately boosts away. No reinforcements close by, though, to aid this force. He's sprinting everything else out. Polt's trying to retreat to his additional forces, but everything's getting swallowed up as he retreats. The Widow Mines give a little bit of a safety cushion, but Hyun's just trying to win with pure numbers and overwhelming this force.
Yeah, and losing that 4th base is pretty big there for Hyun, but if he's able to pick off a lot of these units instead in trade-off, you can almost argue that that's not too bad for him, but we'll see if he's able to go through this. There's a lot of Widow Mines, some pretty good detonations, but Banelings do survive here. 4th command center still alive, a 5th one there as well. And it is going to be pushed back for now. So let's look at the numbers after this fight's happened. Polt is now 20 supply ahead. He doesn't have 3-3 on the way, but I'm pretty sure that's going to start in the next couple of seconds or so. And with the 4th base down, Hyun didn't do critical damage. He's low on a gas income because of that 4th base not being there. And I would have to say that that was a pretty good trade-off there, even though Polt lost quite a few units. Having 3-3 on the way, a 4th place established, and as you said, creep spread pushed quite far back. I'm liking Polt's position as well, as you said before.
Yeah, it's getting into a pretty weird situation. There's no Banelings on the map. He's morphing in 4. The Mutalisk count is very low. 9 mutas is not enough to threaten an expansion that has 1 or 2 missile turrets. Hyun has to be very careful at where he decides to invest his gas. He's starting up +2 flyer attacks. He's getting the infestation pit, but is he going to go straight for that hive, try to get the rest of the tech up? No, it's more Mutalisks trying to keep that active ability to harass on the map, since Polt hasn't turned his 4th base into a planetary fortress. But this is where things get tricky. The Zerglings trying to go for the rest. The Mutalisks actually do manage to hit that 3rd base. The Zerglings getting on top of the 4th, and we're seeing Hyun start to take a little bit of the momentum back in this game, or at least he's trying to.
Well, with losing the 4th base, he simply doesn't have enough money to be able to go up to Hive, research 3-3, try to upgrade himself and further his tech. Off 3 bases, you can do it, sure, but you don't build Banelings, you're not going to have a high Mutalisk count, and he really needs to stay on those units at the moment. But with the 4th base being established and 3-3 on the way, it's almost like there's a bomb ready to explode once this is done.
And while Polt was cleaning up those Zerglings at his 4th base, he actually killed all of the Mutalisks at his 3rd. There's barely anything left to prevent Polt from pressing out onto the map, and even if Hyun somehow gets enough units to shove him back, he can very easily pick up. There's no way that the 5 or so mutas left for Hyun are going to be enough to stop him from continuing to bring this pressure. A couple Banelings do charge in, but nothing really consequential done by Hyun, and Polt has a pretty good number of orbital commands as well. His economy is going to explode.
Oh, nice hit there with that Widow Mine on the right-hand side, but Polt, another one there too. Polt's got a massive supply advantage here, and he has the economy to never lose that supply advantage, and 3-3 is dooming on us. It's so close, and then you've got the +2 carapace for the Widow Mines as well. This is not looking good at all for Hyun. He's trying to establish a new base, but Polt's just been on top of things for quite a while here, and eventually we're going to see a big movement out from Polt, especially when these upgrades complete. And it may be a movement out, which cannot be stopped.
It certainly seems so. There's a lot of medevacs, a lot of healing power with this army. What's the Baneling count for Hyun? Only 9. A couple decent splits can really help with that. And he has to worry about these random Widow Mines on the map. Hyun continuing to press out a little bit, having some trouble as the creep gets clean. Polt just needs to stay split. 13 Banelings on the way, but is it going to be in time? Polt spreading behind the Marauders. Still, about 10 or so Marines are alive, and just Zergling Mutalisks can have a lot of trouble with this. Now the Banelings are done, but Polt's units being so cost-effective without that area of effect damage to pick them off. And already, another wave of Marines and Marauders with these Widow Mines is prepared outside of the natural expansion of Polt.
And now we should see the never-ending reinforcements. The Widow Mine hit gets a couple of Mutalisks there. And all we're going to see from Polt is push, 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 and push. He's going for the win now. His upgrades are complete. And at the moment, oh, another big hit there from the Widow Mine onto that Mutalisk, or a couple of them. And all It just keeps on happening, isn't it? It just keeps on happening. He's losing more and more units over time. Another couple of decent hits, and Polt pushing forward, and that's going to be it.
It can be very risky to try to make these engagements in the early phase work when you're behind in the series, but I guess it's just going to come down to how lucky, I guess, or brave Hyun is feeling. But we are here on Derelict Watcher, spawning in the bottom left position as the red Terran player, up 1-0 in this best of 3, trying to stay alive from CM Storm. It is Polt. The Terran player with a lot of fans in the crowd. His opponent in the northeast trying to stay alive, clinging on, down 1 game from Team Quantic Gaming. It is Hyun.
Hyun having won a DreamHack this year, spraying that bottle of champagne, loved it. Probably one of the most successful champagne bottle sprays we've had at DreamHack. And maybe that's one of the reasons he needs to get to the grand final tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about putting on a show in the game. Sometimes it's a lot about what the players can do outside of the game. But I think as far as this overall match goes, this map, compared to Akalon Wastes, much more difficult for the Terran player to secure that 4th. And it's still about a reasonably similar difficulty for the Zerg to defend as on Akalon Wastes, or at least any other map. So I think this gives Polt a little bit of an edge towards that mid-game stage. It shouldn't be as easy for Polt to hold on to his expansions early. And this could be something that allows Hyun to get a bit more aggressive. But in the early game, it seems just pretty similar, in all honesty, compared to Akalon Wastes.
Well, there goes the hatchery has been placed down. And we will be having a Reaper play once again from Polt. Always a big favorite to the Reaper play in the Reaper opening. What do you make of Polt's overall style? He plays very different to a lot of other Terran players when he opens up for an early Viking, early Medivacs, focuses on stim, focuses on units and being able to produce and being active and controlling the game. Do you think that's a good style against a player like Hyun, who is also very dangerous, very aggressive, very active, sometimes in the middle of the map with a lot of units himself?
Well, you have to look at the overall basis of Polt's build. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife, if you will. There's a lot of different parts of it. He gets the standard Hellions, okay, he gets the Reapers as well. It's a little bit extra. It helps a little bit more with the harass, a little bit better scouting. Then moving into the Vikings, sometimes the early Marauder, it gives him the potential to hold off early aggression with very little production because of how early that starport is and how late the third base is. One of the classic weaknesses that's seen with Polt's build is dealing with attacks that hit before his later production kicks in. 9 to 10 minute timing attacks where another Terran player like, say, 4GG with the builds that he did earlier against his Zerg opponent was able to get a very quick 3-rack setup to defend against the Roach timing from Lenok. That type of build is one of the things that Polt's style is specifically vulnerable to just because of how late his extra barracks always come into the game.
Reaper is going to come up to this natural now. Jolts past the mineral line, as there are a couple of drones hiding. Goes straight towards the main base here. A couple of Zerglings are there to greet it. And it doesn't look like this Reaper will be able to get too much done. He's going to change his direction towards the natural here. And Hyun should be able to save this. Does put it into the extractor. And will want to cancel that very shortly here. And this Reaper is going to get pushed back. And no damage dealt there, but he did get a bit of a scout around. Not a major scout. I don't think he checked both of the gases inside the main base there. But there is now another Reaper. And that's always something he will want to check out, considering Hyun's playstyle, of course.
Yeah, you can. It's one of the nice things about the Reaper opening is if the Zerg player isn't completely diligent with maintaining the positioning of their queens, the Reapers with their regenerating health can actually do a little bit of damage. Sometimes see players able to get a little bit more than they bargained for if you get an early kill on some of these units, but Polt's command center in the natural is finishing up. He still has that very standard setup, a lot of minerals banked. There's the extra gas. There's the starport being added on. And these Zerglings actually managed to slip by the Reapers, adding in a little bit of damage, delaying this command center. Polt does finish it, gets that SCV over there. This supply depot that's been building for 1 second looks like it will get canceled in the nick of time. But for the most part, Polt's still playing the same game, a little bit slowed down by that Zergling poke, but not really anything that's going to matter as far as this game goes past 10 minutes.
All right, well, we have the starport once again being built here by Polt. And Hellions are on the way again. Do you think he plays exactly the same as previous? Do you think he goes for that same style on a map like this as well?
It would certainly be fine. There's a lot of open space, so if you can get good amount of, if you can get enough Hellions to poke around the areas where the queens are, you need to spread a lot of creep tumors on this map to cover all of the areas outside the natural. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to zone away Hellions and Reapers with those queens. And I think that means that the Hellion, the heavier Hellion opener is fine. I'm not sure Polt will stick to that. He has a lot of other transitions that we've seen him take from this. But poking away at this third hatchery is really nice. He just needs to be careful he doesn't get caught unawares by any other units. Doesn't look like Hyun's doing that, though. We're actually seeing the Roach Warren and double evolution chamber.
Yeah, Roach Warren and a double evolution chamber. Roaches are going to be very good at defending against this style, especially with good creep spread, which is already pushing itself forward. But these 3 Hellions and 2 Reapers, there is 6 Slings behind this as well. Is he going to be able to get to that hatchery? It's very, very low here. And it looks like he is going to save it for now with these 3 Queens. These Hellions and Reapers should be able to get away. But look at that, a difference of style coming out from Hyun. Going for the range attack for the Roaches here. Going to be getting that carapace down. Going to be looking towards completely changing his playstyle.
Yeah, he has the lair on the way as well. No carapace just yet, but with that +1 attack, this could actually be a little bit closer towards that build that we actually saw Leenock use versus 4G with the very fast +1/1 roach timing. Of course, this third base is much earlier for Hyun than compared to that matchup. Polt still putting out some Marauders. He has his second barracks together, so he's putting out a little bit more bio now. Hasn't committed to quite as many Hellions on the field, still just 6 to accompany his 2 Reapers. But with this medevac, double medevac production, he built that quick reactor again with the starport. He can go for a very fast bio attack and abuse the immobility of a roach-based composition from Hyun, buying himself time. The Reapers and the Hellions you see trying to approach one of these queens, dealing a lot of damage. There's a transfuse though, won't be able to grab that. At the cost of a Hellion, he takes away some of the queen energy, but nothing really, no real tangible edge gained here for the Cooler Master Storm Terran.
Yeah, I think this playstyle from Hyun is very dangerous, what we're seeing come out, because it can win games in the mid-game. It's strong now because it's good against what we see defensively. It's going to become stronger because the upgrades are going to complete, roach speed's going to be complete, and he's going to be able to hit a lot of mid-timings, mid-game timings that is. But the longer the game goes on, the worse this composition's going to be. So Polt, I'm not sure, has quickly identified exactly what he's playing against. And that's going to be something which he's going to have to do. He's going to need to have more Marauders. He's going to have to prepare for these mid-game timings. But first of all, as he pushes forward now, does Hyun have enough to push us back? He should do if he's been able to work out his build properly.
Well, Polt's trying to step forward and clear out some of the creep tumors. There's some roaches here to defend, but a Widowmine as well as the stim with this trickled-in number of Marauders is going to work really well since there's no Zergling speed. He's able to step back and get a great position. Now, the Queens are here to add in those transfuses. The Widowmine tries to dent the Roach's armor a little bit, but for the most part, still relatively safe from Hyun. And to be perfectly honest, it doesn't really matter that Polt's seen these Roaches as far as anticipating an attack comes, because Hyun, this is a little bit more towards what he would normally do, eventually moving into a Roach, Zergling, Baneling style, not just sitting on pure Roach. But I'm wondering if now that this attack upgrade is finished, Polt's going to start to worry a little bit more about the attacks coming his way, and we're even seeing him make that same adjustment in the first game, getting out the quick siege tank just in case.
Yeah, we even see the Hydralisk Den coming down, Burrow as well. He's really committing to this playstyle. A scan goes down on the third base here from Polt, really questioning what's going on. And he sees the later gases added on. He sees the Hydralisk Den being added too. If he didn't know before, he 100% knows now.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's that threat that Hyun will just play out the Roach, Baneling, Zergling style, and seeing the Hydralisk Den lets him know that's not going to be quite as much of a problem, but it also means he can still do a lot of this drop play. There won't be as much, it won't be the anti-air of the Mutalisks to deal with these units flying around the map. Polt's going to take his third base now, but the pressure that he brought on has actually bought him a lot of time. Hyun won't try to make an attack with this 1-1.
And is Polt going to continue to increase his tank production, though? I mean, he's got 2. Does he go further than that, or does he stop and switch over to Widowmines at this point? It looks like he has stopped for now. But as these 2 upgrades get ready to complete, that's the big opportunity. That's the mid-game push where Hyun's going to be at his strongest.
Yeah, it's a very powerful attack. Polt still being very diligent with his trying to push this creep back. And of course the Hydralisk, the Roach is a bit slower than the Zergling Baneling composition. It's really nice that if you can delay that, that means if that push does come, it's going to be just that little bit slower. And 10 Hydras are on the production tab. We're getting closer and closer to that 2-2 setup. He does have the 4th hatchery, so he can still commit to a little bit of a longer game. But to your earlier question, Apollo, it's continued siege tank production. The second factory has completed. I look to see a tech lab on this. If you know it's Roach Hydralisk, it all comes down to just getting a solid tank count and looking for positioning to attack before the Zerg player has a hive. And if he does bring in this assault, there's such a wide area for Hyun to attack into Polt that just a couple of siege tanks won't be enough to stop this 2-2 attack.
Well, we're going to find out. I guess one of the good things that that Polt can do is continue to drop. If this attack's going to come out, which it will very soon, he can drop, and as long as he's able to keep the defense strong. But is that going to be enough? He's only got a single bunker down there, just a couple of tanks. He is continuing tank production, and that was one of the big things that I thought should be happening here against this playstyle. You need a lot of tanks, and as this 2-2 upgrades nears completion, Hyun is moving down there, but Polt is on the other side of the map at the same time here, and tanks do push back the initial volley. 2-2 not quite ready yet. But the longer he waits, the more tanks we're going to see out.
Yeah, I think that fourth base almost acts as a bait. He's just keeping a large chunk of Polt's army outside, and now he's going to press into that space. There's a lot less bile here than there could be. The Roaches and Hydralisks spreading out. One siege tank falls, the second one eliminated. He's just going to continue to swarm over. There's not enough bile here. Polt needed his whole force to defend. At the same time, Polt's trying to counterattack into the natural expansion. Might even be able to kill off these evolution chambers before the 2-2 completes, just mere seconds away. Instead, just choosing to go for these units. Cancels the upgrades, but Hyun pressing into the natural. Now the SCV is being pulled at the same time. The drone's being pulled at the natural. Both players going for a bit of a base trading type setup. Polt still has his third base walled off. Quite a little bit easier to defend. The siege tanks are coming out in the main base. He has a little bit of a wall. Sieging up now, just trying to hold this attack off, seeing if he can stabilize in his main base. The Roach Hydra reinforcements cleaning up Polt's army at Hyun's natural.
Yeah, with the upgrades now completed, this becomes a little bit more difficult. 2-2 Roach Hydras just tearing apart this natural. They've successfully defended back home. And yes, he lost quite a few drones, but an orbital command's gone missing. It's a little bit close still. I mean, but look at this, 137 supply to 85. Polt may have been dropping with far too many units. Did he really need 3 medevacs full to kill a fourth base? And at that point, his defense at home wasn't quite strong enough.
I have to give a tip of the hat for Hyun, letting Polt see that fourth base. He committed so much to attacking it. You're right, all of those units in the medevacs, and now Hyun is able to just chew apart this army. Part after part, he's up 126 supply to 70. And, Polt can try to get good siege tank positioning, but there's not enough medevacs to keep this bile healed. The medevacs are out of energy. The Hydras are pressing forward. The SCVs are coming. The last siege tank outside of Polt's main base falls, and that's it. He's got 1 Marauder and 1 tank to try to stop about a 10 Hydralisks from blasting through his front door, and I don't think it's going to be enough, Apollo. He's inside the main base. Polt's losing absolutely everything. A few Marines trickle out, but GG. Hyun ties up the series 1-1. And both of these players can't advance. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time to find out who moves on and who goes home. Belshire Vestas is the setting for the deciding map between these two star-studded players, spawning in the bottom right position as the red Terran player. From CM Storm, it is Polt. A decisive game one, but he needs to keep his eyes open for the tricks this man can play. In the northwest, the blue Zerg player from Quantic Gaming, it is Hyun.
So I really think the biggest part of this third game between these two is Hyun going to do something that shortens the game length. Is he going to try something to win the game, some may say easier than it is to play a longer one against Polt?
It's interesting because there's a weird variability of how much you need to commit to kill someone who opens up with a build like Polt's. If the Reapers see that you go for the fastest Roaches possible, he still has that quick tech lab on the barracks. He's accustomed to already building Marauders for later game attacks, and those Marauders can just as easily defend against pure, small, 8 or 9 Roach shoves. That's not something that's really going to kill a player like him. If Hyun decides to be aggressive, it needs to be something a little bit later, closer to the 9-minute mark, maybe Roach, Baneling, hitting before that extra production that Polt gets a little bit later has an opportunity to kick in.
Well, I know a lot of people, when they watch Hyun, they do question if he's going to go for an all-in. They question, is he going to build a lot of Roaches? But he doesn't necessarily need to play that playstyle. He can play regular Zerg versus Terran, or more traditional, I guess is the better word, that we see from the likes of Jaedong, from StarTale Live, from a lot of other Zerg players. He's got a lot of different playstyles that he can choose from, and that definitely makes him a dangerous Zerg player to go up against. But one thing that is always common, the trends are always there when watching Hyun play. He is hyper-aggressive in the mid-game. He doesn't like to rush the Hive. He doesn't like to build 1,000 Mutalisks. He likes just to have the swarm of Zerglings and Roaches. He just likes to overbuild them to be able to attack from multiple different angles, to make it almost impossible for tanks and Widowmines to get the correct connections to prevent the Banelings from getting towards the Marines. That's the playstyle he loves. He always has done. I remember the first tournament he played in, DreamHack Stockholm last year, 2012. All he was doing, mass Zerglings, mass Banelings, relying on his mechanics, his lava injects, his production to be able to overly produce his opponents.
Yeah, and one of the advantages that gives over the current meta for Terran versus Zerg is if that parade push starts to come from Polt, something that we see from almost every Terran player, just sending these waves streaming down the field. If he overextends for the slightest second, that overproduction of units that Hyun likes to go for can easily cause a counter swing right back to Polt's base, allowing for a quick win if Polt overextends for even a moment.
All right, so Polt now is absolutely just trying to look. Do I see a gas inside his main base? No, I do not. So as soon as Polt gets that information, he can already start to say to himself, okay, the fastest terms of rushing is not coming at me. I'm not going to be hit early, which means he can actually go to his regular build and not have to adapt, not have to get ready and prepare himself physically for an attack and an assault. And I think that against a player like Hyun, who is so good at executing those type of attacks, I think he'll feel good about himself here.
Yeah, knowing that at the very least it's not coming early just gives you a little bit of that breath of relief as a Terran player. You don't need to suddenly rush up a bunch of supply depots to wall off your natural. You don't need to crank out those Marauders super early, delaying your other tech. And you know, especially obviously don't have to worry about the mass bunkers you have to build or anything like that. So you could even go for something like a fast third command center. It hasn't really been his style. I feel like it's still more likely than not that it will be the starport added on. He has a lot of those minerals banked up once again, straight for the Hellions. There's the starport being added. There's the second refinery as well. Another interesting thing to note, Apollo, just these two overlords are the only ones on Polt's side of the map, the ones that want to get the information. These Reapers try to come in and grab a creep tumor, will lose one of them. Trades the Reaper for the tumor that was being spawned, but not really too much done, and these Zerglings being pocketed a little bit, trying to catch anything that jumps up this cliff area.
So we do see Hyun taking 3 gases at once, and some may say why 3. Usually at around 5 minutes, 5:15, around that time, you see Zerg players take 2 gases, but he took 3 at 6 minutes. He focused a lot more on minerals, but he's going to have a faster gas income at this point because he's taking 3 at one time. To be honest, it's not that much of a difference. He just had a bit of mineral income for a bit of a longer time than he would do usually. The Roach Warren has been planted down here, so it looks like he will be throwing down the evolution chambers next, I'd imagine. But the big question is it going to be Roach upgrades again? Is it going to be Zergling upgrades? And I wouldn't be surprised if it was Roaches.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't even started the Zergling speed upgrade.
Wait a minute. He's not adding on the evolution chambers. He's starting this, that's a lot of gas that he's mining, which the evolution chambers should already be like, all right, trying to upgrade. Are we just going to see a huge amount coming in of Roaches? Okay, so the evolution chambers are going to come in here, and he's going to use a little, well, I think they're a little bit later than usual. I really thought that he could have been going for an attack there.
Yeah, he has a lot of resources built up. He could put out a huge swell of Roaches, and there's 8 of them. A few Zerglings tripped their way into the mineral line, and he actually killed a couple SCVs with these, but the Hellions, some of them split into this natural expansion, going for a few of these drones. No serious number of kills yet, but he gets information, and once he sees these Roaches pop, he might get a little bit more on the defensive side. 8 Roaches, I feel like you're almost pressing into that must be aggressive with it because of how much you invest. Although catching these Hellions is, you know, he doesn't actually, I don't know if he needs to really push out just yet, but he does deny, as we said earlier, that map vision.
Yeah.
Polt's, though, still producing Hellions. This is looking a little bit more like that Game 1 setup that we had.
Yeah, I really don't see these 8 Roaches being too aggressive, especially against Polt's playstyle. He's going to be moving out against you in the next minute or so. So why would you move to meet and greet him in the middle of the map against an attack which is going to be stronger than 8 Roaches? It doesn't really make sense. But now he's got the double evolution chambers upgrading later, though. They're really late because these finished quite a while back, but only just now started to reach, and they are for Zergling upgrades. These Roaches are to help defensively, but did I not just see drones die anyway?
Well, that's just the crux of the situation. He didn't kill too many drones. Polt's got 5 overall this game. But I really like that Hyun is showing a third way to play Zerg versus Terran. This is, I think, what a lot more people are accustomed to seeing from Hyun. The Roach, Zergling, Baneling style. There's a potential that he could add on the Spire and that the Roaches are purely for defense against this Marauder Hellion attack, but there's still that option. He can bring a lot of aggression. 5 more Roaches are on the way, and I just want to point out that despite the Zergling upgrades, he still hasn't started Zergling speed yet, so Hyun's kind of spending his resources in an interesting way as that lair is halfway done.
Yeah, that's actually a little bit of a mistake here. You don't upgrade Zerglings and not get speed for them here. And I really think that he's just assuming that he has it, because at this point of the game, you would have it,
Yeah.
but he never got it earlier on. So I think Hyun is making that mistake here, and it could cost him, because eventually he's going to be all right, time to build Zerglings and Banelings.
We'll just imagine how
And then-
strong the drops will be if he doesn't have Zergling speed as well.
this is
Catching those is going to be a nightmare.
This is a mistake here. This is they could cost him quite a lot.
He's starting up the Baneling nest. This looks like the classic Hyun setup. And he's positioned well enough to try to receive some of these units. The Marauders, though, with the range advantage, just hiding back. The Roaches don't have that speed upgrade yet, and it allows him to get a good position. He just brings the weakest Marauder back. He's picking off Roach after Roach, just being cost effective.
Yeah, this is some good play here from Polt. Is playing defensive at the same time with tanks back at home, realizing that, you know, this player can be very dangerous moving out. And he gets through again with 3 Hellions, and they're not meant to be able to do this. This is what the Roaches were built for, and he gets in there. Still, no Zergling speed. And he's, you know, researching +2 attack here. 24 Zerglings. And I guarantee as soon as they pop out, he's going to be like, wait a minute.
This does not seem to be the right type of Zerglings that I ordered. That's going to be very, very slow. The Baneling nest is done. It would have been funny if he's actually going to have Baneling speed before Zergling speed. It's going to happen. He has it on the production tab, so he's going to feel a little bit weird. The Spire's on the way. Now the Zergling speed does begin. So this kind of means he can't really attack, to be honest, without Zergling speed. Even with these Roaches and the Baneling nest on the being done, he has to kind of just sit back. And I feel like taking a 4th base is all he can really do.
And Polt's been playing this game very cautiously. It's 12 minutes and 15 seconds. The 3rd base is only just now floating across. Bear in mind he didn't rush out a 3rd command center, but he isn't really looking to really stretch his economy fast. He's much more focused, and always has been. His lead is not going to be gained through his macro and his production. It's going to be through doing damage physically with the units that he has present. And once again, he's looking to do that on the 3rd base.
Viking dies as it gets a final parting shot to that Overlord. A ton of Banelings being produced defensively for Hyun. We see him just sitting there with a lot more Zerglings on the production tab. This is where Hyun's going to try to swell and overwhelm Polt. A bit, he can't really do it quite yet because of how late that Zergling speed was. He still has to sit inside of his base.
Well, no Roach speed has been researched, so he's not going to be focusing at all on Roaches past this point. The Spire's near completion, and he will be wanting to build quite a few. Notice that 2-2 is on its way, only just now starting here for Polt, and I think he could have built that or researched that a little while ago. But another thing that he's been very active about is clearing creep. This will make all of his engagements much stronger as the game goes on, keeping the creep back from a player like Hyun, who loves to spread his creep there. It's something we've noticed in every single game so far, and it's been really working out well for Polt.
It's one of those things that made Game 1 look so easy for Polt, and we do actually have some Mutalisks coming in. So Hyun's kind of set himself up in this position that he likes. The Mutalisk's always good for catching medevacs. We see Polt just bringing this pressure over, killing the creep, and he's like, your army's here. Well, I'm just going to lift up and boost away. Polt immediately actually throwing down some of these missile turrets, just trying to cover his expansions and the potential aggression as well. Yeah. He has the 3rd base walled off. Polt's got most of his defensive setup postured pretty nicely. Nothing too much at the 3rd base, but he's being active on the map. Does have a lot of siege tanks, actually, a bit more than you maybe expect versus a regular Zergling Baneling style. But now the Mutalisks are starting to come in, getting ready to pressure that main base, and they're going to fly right into where the missile turrets are.
And they're not going to be able to do anything here, losing the Mutalisks immediately. And even Marines stepping to the right-hand side here. Nice move by Polt, but good reactions there from Hyun to get out just in the nick of time there. Notice that we do have Roach speed finally being made. A 4th base rather slow, again, here for Hyun, who's playing... I mean, he's not you know, racing his economy up. Neither has Polt throughout this game either, to be honest, but he's very focused again on mid-tier, no infestation pit, and we probably won't see one, but I'm expecting a lot of aggression soon from Hyun. He can't sit on these units and not be the one being aggressive.
His composition really relies on taking great engagements, using the Roaches as a little bit of fodder while the Banelings crash into the bio. But Polt's the one that's starting to get ready to be aggressive now, and he has 7 siege tanks on the map. He's basically playing this Marine Marauder tank style. He's now switching into mines since he's got a good tank count, but the +1 vehicle weapons finishes up. That means his siege tanks can take out these Zerglings a lot more easily. The 2-2 is about to complete for Polt. Keep in mind that because Hyun doesn't rush for that tech, no chance of 3-3 on the way. The Mutalisks are opening the door for the Zerglings and Banelings to rush into this 3rd base, go for the counterattacks, and start to get aggressive, like you said. Even 17 Banelings on the way. He has a huge army right outside the vision of this watchtower that Polt's just playing.
If he's able to clamp down on this Terran army, he'd be in a fantastic position, but the tanks are seized. The spread isn't that good for the Marines here. All the Billy's going to connect to what they want to, and the Zerglings prevent the Marines from running away. The pickup is there. from Polt.
And the Mutalisks trying to give chase. Polt bringing the reinforcements up, but he's still got some Banelings left over, pressing in the few siege tanks that were left at home, doing what they can. The Mutalisks grab a large number of these medevacs, and Hyun taking a little bit of a supply lead. Not the worst engagement possible for Polt, though. He still has a lot of his forces. He hasn't lost his economy. He has that 4th command center moving out to take another base.
That was so expensive, though. Banelings in that high demand and that high in number are just... They need to be cost efficient, and they're not. They simply aren't when you don't have a strong economy behind this. Remember, Hyun is only on 3 bases, really. He's not mining from his 4th properly. He doesn't have the highest amount of gas, and that's a lot of Banelings he just moved. And look at Polt. He's still at 165 supply. He's still got an army. He's going to take a 4th base. He has 3-3 on the way. Those sort of assaults are designed to wipe out a Terran army. If you don't wipe it out, then you aren't doing the job properly with the composition you're building.
Yeah, and now he's trying to just open the door once again to the 3rd base, bringing some Zerglings. He realizes he has to do some serious damage. The Banelings are coming in as well from the side, but there's not enough here for Hyun to overwhelm this Terran force yet. The Planetary Fortress is on the way at the 4th. The Widowmine takes a nice pot shot at this army, and Hyun just now starting to move drones over to his own 4th base. This is where the Mules really skyrocket the Terran economy. He has that fresh base, and once he locks us down with a couple of missile turrets, just Zergling Mules will have a really rough time dealing with this without that hive tech.
Yeah, Polt is leading this game in my books, and the longer the game goes on, the more of a lead he's going to obtain. Very simply, because 3-3 is on the way. A 4th base has been established. Hyun needs to do something now, and it needs to be in the next minute or 2 minutes. That's 20-minute mark or 21-minute mark. Unless he takes a substantial lead, then I just fear this game's going to go in favor of Polt.
And here's what he's doing. He burrows a couple of Banelings by the 3rd base.
This could be it.
Sending Banelings to the SCVs. The Marines are stepping over them, getting very, very close. Those mines does scan and picks them off, not doing enough. And that could be, you know, that's one of the last plays that Hyun seemed to have, moving a bunch of Banelings over here, but there's Marines with this Planetary Fortress. It comes down to the positioning. The Planetary Fortress targeting these Banelings, doing a lot of damage on the SCVs. Still alive. The Planetary does not fall. Polt holds his 4th base. Still with 43 SCVs and 3 orbital commands minimum. He has a lot of economy, but the burrowed Zerglings and the Mutalisks hitting the 3rd base again. Polt pulling everything back to try to defend against this. The Widow Mines will be triggered, actually. And if he kills this orbital command, that's just one step on a very long path that Hyun needs to take to bring himself back into this game.
In the next minute or 2 minutes, Hyun knew that he had to do something, and he is making the moves possible. He's gotten onto that 4th base. He's killed the SCVs mining there. He's been on the 3rd base. He's into the main. He realizes that he's up against it. He needs to do damage. He needs to gain a big lead before 3-3 is done. Once 3-3 is done, Polt will trade more efficient. He doesn't need to have the same numbers. He doesn't need to have more numbers than Hyun. And that's the big difference. Is that damage dealt large enough yet? I'm not sure. I still think it's very close. And we're losing those Mutalisks to those mines.
Flying through a minefield, Hyun taking a couple of bad losses.
It's this next attack. The next attack is all or nothing, I feel, here for Hyun. Yes, he has a 5th base, but if these Banelings don't get the best connections to the next fight, we're probably going to see now Polt's at 3-3, then Hyun could be in trouble. And remember, it's coming down. There's only a few minutes really left in this game, potentially. And we will have a winner soon.
These Marines trying to do some pressure actually will get caught. Lifts up in the medevacs, retreats to that Planetary. Now there's missile turrets there, so even just those the Mutalisks won't be enough to break that. Zerglings trying to hit the 3rd. Nothing to be able to find there either. The Hive is about to complete, so at the very worst, Hyun could just try to buy himself a lot of time and to try to catch up in the upgrades or get some other next level of tech. But with the number of barracks that Polt has, he's sitting at 8. A lot of those add-ons that we mentioned earlier were destroyed, so he could actually rebuild a bunch of tech labs if he really wanted to, canceling these Banelings from being produced outside of his base. And the Mutalisks and Banelings, they're actually kind of running away from this Terran army.
And here we have Polt moving across with a very strong army, catching a couple of these Banelings. Hyun is running around.
And Polt might actually corner all of these units inside of his base. Hyun needs to either make some sort of magic burrow play work, but he scans ahead of time just to make sure the Banelings crash in. The Marauders are in front. The siege tank on the high ground can take out a lot of these Banelings if he target fires. And even these missile turrets keeping everything away. Hyun, he's trying to find space. I will say he's bought enough time for the Hive to complete, but he has not yet done anything with it. We don't see the 3-3. He's strapped for cash and strapped for gas because of how many units he needs to make to keep Polt on the run.
Oh, this is a big attack coming in on this right-hand side for Hyun. He's going to get to the SCVs once again, and even the Planetary Fortress could go down.
A great pickup, destroying this fourth base. That's a lot of the money that Polt's using to rebuild this Bioforce time after time. Hyun actually taking a nice supply lead the first time in a while, but that's not in the army sense. He's killed a lot of SCVs. There's still a huge army, up about a 15 supply lead of the army for Polt.
Polt's been running around. He's done a lot of damage. Over the couple of minutes now, he's killed a lot of SCVs. The SCV count's down to 25. Polt still has a large army, but it's not going to be replenished. Not very well at all. And in comes Hyun. That's a lot of Stim Marines there. Where are the Banelings? Only 4. 4's a little low at this point.
I love this. He's done a lot of damage to the economy of Polt. If he
just
forces
needs
out
to kill
enough
the army.
scans, if he forces out enough scans to be used by Polt, these Burrow Banelings can do a lot of damage that Hyun's starting to plant around. And these Marines, he's still scanning, being smart. And Polt actually should see that there are some at the tail end of this as well, so he can kind of avoid those even if he doesn't have enough energy for another scan. But the +3 is on the way for Hyun. He's doing his best to claw in and even out these upgrades.
It's up to the Banelings. The Banelings have to get the right connections for for Hyun, because if they don't, then these Marines, there's so many of them. Unless that count gets dwindled down, these Marines are going to shred every single Mutalisk and every single Zergling. The Banelings have to connect. But right now, Hyun knows that this is going to be very difficult to achieve, and he keeps on doing runarounds.
A great way to buy time as a Zerg player, running these Mutalisks in. He's finally gotten a really nice number. 29 of them are on the field, and he's saying, yeah, Polt, you want to move out and attack me? I will come back and kill your production, slow you down as much as possible. Polt says, screw it. He's moving his whole force towards the fourth base of Hyun, bringing all of the pressure. There's a couple Banelings here, seeing if they can create some engagements, detonating on the Marauders. A lot of Widow Mines covering this as well, and I don't know if Hyun can hold on to this base. The Mutalisks, though, should be able to deny this fourth command center once again.
And a typical fight to the end between these two players. Every time we see it, usually is that way. And right now, they're both ultimately out of economy. They're not mining anymore. So it's going to come down to what they really have left. The minerals are going to start to drop when it comes to their income. We are seeing a couple of mining down here, but SCVs are going to get destroyed once again. And 19 SCVs versus quite a few drones, but it's that base on the right-hand side, which is the fully mining one. And it's going to come down to units versus units almost at this point.
Yeah, I think at this point, Hyun just wants to try to force Polt into overcommitting. He will pick off the third command center from that base. And now, Polt's just sitting on 2 orbitals. He has to fly out his main or his natural if he wants to mine again. And we can see here, he's going to send out the natural command center. He still has a very strong army, important to keep in mind. But he's a bit low on that SCV count. So this supply lead that he has is almost artificially higher than it already looks, because his army is absolutely massive. It's 126 supply versus 72. Hyun he can't engage him until he can get up another base of mining and try to restore some of the economy to afford more Banelings.
What is Hyun going to do to lower the Marine count? Because the Marine count's scary. He needs a good Widowmine hit. Widowmine hit. Borrowed Baneling hit here. This left-hand side, yeah, that's going to be a goner. He can't really engage that. The Mutalisk count's decent. With +3 attack, that's going to be pretty decent as well. But he needs to lower this Marine count. I still think it's a little bit too high at this point, as you described. The army supply is much, much higher here for Polt. He's got great upgrades. He's got Widowmines surrounding his army everywhere. Picks off a couple of these Widowmines on the right-hand side. That always helps.
Very nice to grab those. And I think if he can get an engagement on this split-apart army of Polt, that's one of the best ways he can claw his way back in here. And he wants to take this fight. He says, this isn't your whole army. If I can fight pieces of you at a time, that's where this army supply difference doesn't matter as much, because we're kind of fighting with a similar force. And now that Hyun has completed his +3 attack, he's doing a little bit more damage. No Carapace upgrade yet, but he's also gotten the +3 flyer attack for these Mutalisks. They're going to add in a ton of extra damage, and here he comes towards that fourth base again. I almost feel like he has to deny this, and if he can force the Marines back, there's still that Baneling mine waiting outside.
That's half the army there. That's half the army there. That's half of the Marines. If he's able to kill these Marines quite cost efficiently and then get to the other army.
And that's exactly what he's trying to do. The Marines are coming in. The other half is trying to come back here. The Overlord even pooping some creep. The command center cannot immediately re-land. But if these Banelings all die here without detonating on Marines, it's going to be a bit of a bad trade. The supply's still so close. A lot of the Mutalisks managed to make it up, but there's only 14 left overall. And Polt does have a command center at this fourth base.
0 Banelings. Polt's going to start mining again. This looks like it's getting further and further in hand of Polt. Polt's getting closer and closer to a victory here against a former teammate and still friend today. But look at this. Without a huge Baneling count, these Marines are almost unstoppable. They are unstoppable. And I almost feel at this point, Borrowed Banelings may be the only way. There's 2 right there on the left-hand side. If he's able somehow to use the Mutalisk to drag them in, maybe get a decent detonation, maybe that's one way that he can get back into it. We've seen at these low economy times, Board Banelings are so efficient. Look, they're so close.
Well, that's one of the miracles that Hyun's kind of hoping for. I mean, Polt has 5 SCVs and 2 orbital commands. His economy is non-existent. Hyun has a lot of gas banked. If he could just get mining some minerals, he already has the gas he needs to produce that Baneling count that we talked about. These Widow Mines have been doing a great job of harassing the drones that are trying to long distance mine. The Polt bringing that endless pressure. It still comes down to Hyun needing a fantastic engagement. If you have 9 SCVs and 20 supply above your opponent anyway, your army is absolutely monstrous.
92 to 37, and even less now. Quite a few Zerglings got picked off there. Not looking good here for Hyun. Needs a way, needs to find a way. What is it going to be? What has he got planned? Look at how many Widow Mines there are. They're everywhere.
Trickled all over the map. The Mutalisks come in trying to poke at some of the few SCVs that Polt's managed to churn out. These poor Banelings, man, all they want to do is just try to be MVPs of this game. A couple Marines do sprint over them, but not sure it's worth the detonation. And now he's getting on top of the production. This is pretty much all Hyun can do at this point. He's just trying to hold him back and somehow get some semblance of an economy back.
These might be trapped here. They've got to be careful. There's Marines absolutely everywhere. Look at this. Polt set this out really nicely. Now, these Mutalisks are kind of stuck. They're going to fly out to the right-hand side. Polt moves his army. Hyun, where are you going?
He appears to be boxed in, it seems.
He's going to lose so many Mutalisks if he doesn't get out here.
Doesn't seem Polt will let Hyun leave without a parting gift, and we have 39 drones long distance mining what Hyun wanted to be his 4th base. If only he could have established that hatchery for just a few minutes, but the economic denial he did to Polt, I feel like he could have been able to actually put up the units he needs to overpower this.
If he can pin these Mutalisks back, then go with what else he has left over, which he doesn't need to hold the Mutalisks back, then it's almost like checkmate. Like, what is he going to have? He doesn't have a large chunk of his army. These Marines in the middle, if they just march up, the Mutalisks have to come to defend, but they're going to have to cross over the Marines here.
Yeah, and he's decided his way to do that is to bring the Banelings in as well, try to bait the Marines out. Not the best detonation so far, though. He's going to lose a lot moving into this, not killing off enough Marines, and Polt still sitting pretty. He's secured this base. A lot of the harassing force for Hyun is gone. He's left sitting with just 9 Mutalisks to Apollo. These Marines at the main base are more than enough to stave this off as he presses forward again. GG. Polt will advance, and Hyun has been eliminated from the DreamHack Open Grand Final.